Good evening and welcome. I'm Beth Hillman, the President and CEO of the National September 11th Memorial and Museum. It's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's very special program, held in partnership with the Moth and in honor of Salute to Service, when we recognize our country's veterans and we honor those who served in the military as well as the families and communities that have supported them. I want to extend a warm welcome to our museum members and to those tuning in to our live webcast. Tonight, we're joined by a group of veterans who earlier this fall participated in a Moth storytelling workshop in partnership with the museum. The Moth's Community Program, in which they took part, provides the space, tools, and expertise for people to practice the art and craft of personal storytelling. Storytelling lies at the center of everything we do here at the 9/11 Memorial and Museum. Stories give us an entry point into experiences that can feel almost incomprehensible in scale. In the words of the filmmaker Jean-Luc Godard, sometimes reality is too complex. Stories give it form. I've found stories essential to communicating in every role I've held: parent, educator, citizen, military historian. I've also realized that stories can reveal, distort, obscure, and enlighten, just like other tools of communication. Yet stories may be the most powerful means by which we can connect, persuade, and share. The stories we hear and the stories we tell ourselves shape our thoughts, words, actions, and values. Tonight's storytellers have crafted stories that reflect the many dimensions of their military service. We're honored to hear their stories, and I want to thank them deeply for their service. Thank you for joining us for this evening of storytelling and music. It's now my pleasure to welcome our host for tonight's program, John Good.
Welcome to the Moth Showcase here at the beautiful 9/11 Museum. My name is John Good. It's my distinct honor to be your host for the evening. Please give it up for our incredible musician, Lara Lewison. So good, man. So good. Listen, man, if I could play like that, I wouldn't even talk. It is all I would do. So I'm so excited to be here. This is my first time at the 9/11 Museum. How many of you, round of applause, is your first time here? Oh, fantastic, man, welcome. And how many of you, round of applause, is your first time at a Moth event? Oh, fantastic, man. Listen, please come back. We would love to have you. So this is my first time in the building, so I was wondering if we could take a family photo. So here's how it works, right? You take your phones out, you light up your screen or your flash, you point it toward the stage, and then it's gonna look like a night sky full of fireflies. Listen to this. We got one here, another here. The doors to the light is open. Please join the community. There we go. Listen, look, listen. Let me look. Let me get a picture of this. Prove to my mom I got a job. Hold on. Hold on. Yeah, take that, Mom. All right. Listen, while you got your phones out, just go ahead and turn those off. Just go ahead and turn them off. I'll tell you why. First, there is no recording audio or video allowed here this evening. But secondly, and more importantly, I'm here, you're here, the storytellers are here. This will never happen quite like this ever again. So can we be present in the present? Is that all right with you? Fantastic. Cool. So while you're doing that, I'll tell you a bit about the Moth. The Moth is a nonprofit arts organization headquartered right here in New York City. The Moth believes in the power of storytelling to build community and to foster empathy throughout the world. And this is done in a variety of ways. We do it through workshops, we do it through story slams, we do it through main stages. And it's all possible due to the generous donations of donors, people who just offer, their hearts to the Moth. So a round of applause if you believe in the power of storytelling. Yeah, I love it. The Moth, we believe in the power of first-person storytelling. That's when an individual comes on stage without the aid of notes, and they tell you a true story from their lives. And that's what's going to happen tonight. We have 4 storytellers that are going to do their thing, and I'm going to be one of those storytellers. And each of our storytellers, they have about 8 to 10 minutes to do their thing. But on the off chance they decided, no, you're going to get the war and peace of my life tonight, we have our incredible musician who's going to keep them honest. We're going to give them a little note, something that says Christmas Eve, wrap it up, and that note sounds like, isn't that nice? It's like a storyteller got their wings. But if they don't use those wings and fly to the end of their story, then they're going to hear something a bit more aggressive, and that sounds like the violin of doom. No one wants that. But I'm sure we will have none of that. All of our storytellers are ready to go. Our stories tonight, as you have already heard, there are stories of service. There are service members in their own voices. It was through a workshop that the Moth did in collaboration with the 9/11 Museum, and we're excited to have you hear these stories. All of our storytellers, their bios are in the program, which you have, so they will be introduced to the stage by way of a question. Tonight's question is, what words of wisdom have always served you well? And when I reflected on that question myself, I thought of something I heard when I was a very young man. I was told, in order to be successful at life, you have to be able to turn your stumbling blocks into stepping stones. And I reflected on that also when I thought about this story that I'm going to share. So in my senior year of high school, I had applied to and been accepted to the university of my choice, a beautiful college in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. And I told my dad about it. I was so excited. He said, congratulations. All you got to do now is pay for it. So in high school, I had a decent GPA. I had a 3.2, but they didn't really give scholarships for 3.2s. For instance, our valedictorian, she had a 4.9, a 4.9 on a scale that I was told only went to 4. So I was like, what, are you taking classes in the future? How is this even possible? So I was feeling kind of anxious about my chances of going to college. And I don't know if you watch these nature shows where they show how sharks can sense blood in the water. Military recruiters can sense anxiousness in a high school hallway much the same way. So the next thing I knew, there was a Marine Corps recruiter parade resting by my locker. He said, hello, Jonathan. And I was like, how do you even know my name? Like, what kind of Marine Corps Madam Cleo madness is this? And he knew my name because he'd seen my ASVAB scores. The ASVAB is an aptitude test that lets recruiters know your aptitude for military service and for certain jobs in the military. And mine was pretty high, no 4.9, but I'd take it. And as he was talking to me about the Marine Corps, I began to think about the fact that my father, he'd been a staff sergeant in the Army. I had a brother that had enlisted in the Army, as my sister as well. And I was being asked, invited to join this rich tradition of military service in my family. And I was being, asked to join the Marines, the toughest of the tough. And as I was thinking about that, he said, and we have a GI Bill, which can help you go to college. And that's how I found myself on Parris Island training to be a United States Marine. So there are certain milestones and metrics you have to hit to become a Marine. One is you have to pass the physical fitness test. And, I was 18, I was in good shape, I passed the test. The second is the rifle range. No one has ever confused me with Annie Oakley, but, I hit the target enough times. I passed the rifle range. Next after that, we had a thing called basic warrior training. I was 18, I was basic. I wanted to be a warrior, I was trainable. So I passed BWT. And then one of the last things was the swim qual. Exactly. So I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, in the city. And so in the summers, me and my friends, we would walk the 8 blocks to the public pool. And when we got to the pool, we would all get in the pool and stand there. Because there were too many kids in the pool to actually swim. It was like a black kid soup. It was like a ghetto gazpacho, It was refreshing, but not very informative. So none of us learned how to swim. So when you go down to the Marine Corps, when you get to the swim qual, on that first day, it's a sea of white faces. The Marine Corps was majority white. And then the second day is for people who failed, and that day was mostly inner city black kids who, I'm sure, went to the pool and stood in the water. So when you don't know how to swim in the Marine Corps, they teach you to do a version of the backstroke that looks like you're having an actual stroke. That's what they teach you to do. And so then you have 4 chances to pass the swim qual. So I'd failed the first day, the second day, the third day. So I was down to my last chance. In the Marine Corps swim qual, what you have to do is jump off a 15-foot tower and swim halfway across an Olympic-sized pool. So I'm up on the tower and I'm nervous because I know if I don't pass this time, I've got to go home and I don't want to have to tell my dad and my sister and my brother I didn't make it. I don't want to miss this chance to go to college. So I'm up on the tower, my knees are shaking. And I've got on my full uniform. You have to do it in your full uniform, your camos and your boots. So I pulled my pockets inside out with the hopes that as I jump off the tower, the air will go up my legs and inflate the pockets, and it will serve as a flotation device Just so that you know that doesn't work. So I jumped off, I hit the water, I went under, I came up, and then I immediately began drowning. Immediately I started to drown. And so the swim instructor, he jumps in, he grabs me, he pulls me to the side, and he says, "Get in line." And then he jumps back in the water because everyone is drowning. Everyone is drowning. So I'm on the side, and I'm breathing, and I'm happy to be alive. And I stand up, and I look, and that's when, I really notice, there are two lines, There's a line for people who failed, and there's a line for people who passed. And he said, "Get in line." So I got in the line for the people who passed. And that's how I passed the swim qual, became a Marine, and went to college. And I've learned a few things since. Since that time, I actually learned how to swim. Now, it still looks like I'm having a medical event, but I can do it. And I also learned on that day that sometimes getting what you want is just about getting in the right line. Thank y'all so much for listening to that story. You're too kind. So when I asked our next storyteller what words of wisdom have always served him well, he said that the right thing and the easy thing are never the same thing. Please put your hands together for Brennan Keeter, my man.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. Thanks, John. Appreciate it. All right, thank you. So for me, PTSD manifests itself in an inability to feel anything between fear and anger. And it makes reacting to anything outside of those emotions very difficult. Every day, every moment, every feeling is viewed through this prism of cynicism and to determine whether or not it's a threat. And then you react. In 2003, I was a Marine infantryman in Iraq. My unit had been conducting combat operations in the eastern part of the country. And by August, we found ourselves on the Iran-Iraq border. Our mission there was to prevent weapons and foreign fighters from flowing back into the country from Iran, these mixed in with refugees that had fled the initial invasion. Our base of operations was a small outpost on this rise of ground that overlooked the border itself between the two countries. About a mile in one direction was the actual border crossing, and a mile in the other direction was a small town. And for us, it was pretty boring at this point. The locals had figured out long ago it was more profitable to sell us ice and soda than it was to try to kill us. The insurgency had begun, but it was still in its infancy, and it was still focused in and around Baghdad. But near our little outpost, you could still see all the scars from the conflict from 20 years before. All these trenches and wadis that were in the area between the two countries, and God knows what sort of munitions were still laying in those areas. But it was boring. And we would push out these patrols to the checkpoint and to the town each day, but nothing ever happened. It was hot. It was boring, which is why, this one particular day stood out. Now, my job in our unit was a bit of a problem solver. My solutions involved rockets and explosives. Anytime our unit would come up against an enemy tank or armored vehicle or bunker or strong point, that was a problem I had to solve. This particular day started out like any other. We're all sitting around, and there's a couple squads are out on their mission, but I'm still back at the outpost with my platoon. We're sitting around talking. Nothing's different. And that's why everybody immediately registered when we heard a boom. And then pop, 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 small arms fire. We looked at each other. And there was an unspoken understanding that those sounds didn't come from the town. They came from the border. And then we hear the radio crackle to life. QR after the crossing, QR after the crossing. Quick reaction force to the crossing. There's Marines there that are in trouble. And we're the quick reaction force. We grab our weapons, our body armor, we run to the trucks outside, we start zooming down this bumpy road to get there as fast as we can. And on the way there, everyone's kind of looking at each other and thinking if the 1,000 or so Iranian troops that are opposite us have decided to push an advantage of some sort and make this a broader conflict, none of us are going home. And we get down to the checkpoint and it's chaos. There's people running everywhere, nobody knows what's going on. We get out of the trucks, and my assistant on that particular mission was a 17-year-old Marine affectionately nicknamed Oreo. He's Mexican, he's not even American. His service is going to get him citizenship. He's carrying 2 extra rockets. We make our way up to the parapet of this administrative building so that we can see over this 10-foot berm that marks the border, so we can get a better, view of what's going on. He and I push to the end of the line, and I start looking for a problem to solve. I take out my binoculars, and I start scanning the horizon. And that's when I see it. There's an anti-aircraft gun. And right as I look at them, I see them register us, and those barrels come down. Fair enough. So I say, Oreo, that's our target. He gives me a nod. Only problem is it's way out of range. So this is going to have to be a miracle shot on my part. If this goes south, and this is the start of a broader conflict, I've got 1 shot. I miss, we die. I look down at Oreo, and he's preparing the next 2 rockets, and I don't have the heart to tell this kid that it's not going to matter. So I start considering our options. And that's when I look down over the left side of the wall, and I see a dead body. I'm like, oh. But immediately, I think, if this goes south, I'm going to shoot this rocket, and I'm going to grab Oreo. He doesn't know it yet. And we're going to go over the wall together. And it's going to hurt like hell, but I'm going to land on that dead body, and we're going to survive. Seconds turn to minutes, minutes turn to hours. Eventually, Marine Cobra gunships show up overhead, which is like angels on your shoulders. Nothing happens. Apparently, an old man had wandered outside of the confines of the crossing itself and had stepped on a landmine. And the shooting that we heard was the Iranians trying to push people back from the crossing. So in that particular instance, they were trying to help, not hurt. There were many of these moments over the course of my deployment. And what happens in those moments is your brain shuts off and everything goes to instinct. You act and react based on instinct alone. It's sort of like in Star Trek when the ship is under attack and the captain says, all power to shields and weapons. Nothing else matters in that moment. It's red alert, right? Well, what nobody tells you is how to come down off red alert, let alone how to come down off red alert. And so for 22 years, from the second I got home to relatively recently, I'm not the only one here, but you dig yourself this cynical ditch that's about 1 inch wide and 1 mile deep. And you don't know how to react to anything outside of fear and anger. And everybody you meet doesn't understand why you're there or how to get you out. See, the Marines do a great job of preparing you to face death. They don't do a very good job of preparing you for life when you don't die. With the help of therapy and medication, things like that, I'm happy to report that there's actually a very broad range of human emotions. Whether those feelings are good or bad, whether it's happiness or sadness, whether it's love or heartbreak, all those feelings are a gift. And the purpose of life after you don't die is to feel it. Thank you.
One more time for Brennan Keeter. One more time for Brennan. Wow. Wow, man. Wow, man. That's what I'm talking about, man. That's the beauty of these nights, these Moth nights, is that you just never know. You're going to hear stories that make you laugh, stories that make you sit and think, stories that make you cry. But all the stories remind you that we all have more in common than we have differences, that we all want the same things, that, we want something that we do that brings us honor. We want love, we want happiness. And these storytellers, these talented storytellers, they weave the narrative thread that shows us that we can all come together and be one thing that can keep us all warm. We can all be a quilt. And that's just the beauty of it all, man. One more time for that storyteller, that musical, it's an amazing story. When I asked our next storyteller, what words of wisdom have always served you well? Our next storyteller said that hope has two daughters, anger and courage. Anger about the way of things, and courage to do something about it. Please put your hands together for Maya Molina Schaefer coming to the stage, up, down, and around the bend.
Keep going. Thank you. Last summer, I took my 9-year-old son to the Naval Academy boxing gym. Wooden plaques line the walls, listing the names of champions dating back to 1941. And as he moved along the room, he stopped at 2004, and his eyes widened with surprise, and he said, "Mama, that's your name." And I remember the choice that put my name on that wall. It was 2001, and I was a freshman at the United States Naval Academy. And like so many of us, 9/11 changed everything. I remember watching the Twin Towers fall on a television with my classmates huddled around this television in a naval history class. And I knew in that moment I was no longer going to college for a degree, but now I was preparing for war. And I had little less than 4 years to become someone capable of bringing my Marines home alive. This is what led me into the boxing gym the following year. I needed to be stronger, both physically and mentally, and I needed to know what it was like to take a punch and to keep moving forward. The only problem was that women were not allowed to join the boxing team. And my coach, he tried to ignore me and hope I would take the hint and disappear. But clearly he'd never met someone like me. And I showed up day after day. I trained hard, and I proved to him that I deserved to be on that team. And eventually he relented. My junior year, I had my sights fixed on the Brigade Boxing Championship. This was a legendary tournament at Navy. Think Top Gun meets Rocky. 4,000 midshipmen would come down into the gym, and they would cheer on their classmates as they battled it out like gladiators in the arena. It was sacred, and no woman had ever competed in it. So a fellow female midshipman and I decided to change that. We petitioned the athletic board, and after a very long deliberation, they finally agreed to let us fight each other. Here's the thing they don't tell you about making history. It's terrifying. You see, my opponent was an incredible boxer. She had been boxing longer than me. She was faster, she was stronger, and she had this ferocity in her that I was still learning to cultivate in myself. And every time we sparred at practice together, she would beat me decisively. But I kept on training, and I trained harder than I ever trained for anything in my life. 2 weeks before the big championship, and my boxing coaches brought me into a briefing room after practice one day, and they sat me down, and my head coach looked me in the eyes. They said, "Maya, You train harder than anyone on this team, and you deserve to be the first female champion. The only problem is your opponent is a better boxer. And she's gonna beat you, and you're going to lose in front of 4,000 people. But here's what we're prepared to do. We can postpone the fight by a year. She will graduate. We'll find you someone that's equal skill set. You'll still get to be the first one to fight, and you'll likely be the first woman to win, cementing your name in history. The choice is yours. Hearing these words felt like a punch to the kidney. I mean, honestly, no one had ever offered me a shortcut or a handout in my life. Up until then, it had always been a struggle, and I had learned that if you wanted something, you just had to work really hard to earn it. But in that moment, I was tempted. They were offering me victory with a safety net. I could already see my name on that plaque without the risk of public humiliation. And I also knew that people only remembered those who win and never the runner-up. But I decided to think about it, and that night I went home and I called my mom. I laid out the situation, and she quietly listened and then asked me one question. Who do you want to be? And that question cut through everything because I realized this wasn't just about a boxing match. This was about the leader that I wanted to be. In a few short years, I was gonna be standing in front of my Marines, asking them to trust me with their lives. And what kind of leader would I be if I chose an easy victory over an honorable fight? And more so, what kind of path was I creating for the women behind me if I didn't step into that arena? So the next day I marched into practice. And I told my coaches, I will fight her, no delay. Because at the end, it really wasn't about me being the first. It was ensuring that we wouldn't be the last. The night of the fight, and I am terrified. I remember stepping into that arena and hearing my name being chanted by thousands of people and the light shining down on me like judgment itself. And my heart was pounding so hard, I barely heard the ref's instructions, and then the bell rang, and there was no time for fear. For 3 hard-fought rounds, my opponent and I, we battled it out in that ring, trading blow by blow, leaving everything we had in there. And at the end of it, my nose was bleeding, my ribs were bruised, but I was still standing, and I didn't quit. And when the ref announced the winner, it was a split decision, closer than anyone thought. And I had won. But more importantly, we had won. 21 years later, I'm standing in that gym and I realize my son is still waiting for me to explain why his mama's name is on that plaque. So I kneeled down to him and I said, do you see the names of all the female champions who have come after me? Well, someone had to be brave enough to be the first to step into that ring, to clear that path. And the decision I made that night to step into that ring, to choose the honorable fight over the easy victory, and more importantly, to fight for something greater than myself, became the moral foundation for the rest of my military career. It helped me as I led Marines and soldiers into multiple combat deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan, when I was leading security programs for women in Africa, and even now, out of uniform, still fighting for women and girls who deserve someone in their corner. Through it all, I learned that the paths that were worth walking and worth fighting for were the ones that you created for others behind you. Leaving the gym that day, I took one final look at my name on that wall among those champions. And I realized I'm really proud of my 20-year-old self. Not for winning, but for just having the courage to step in there when I could have waited. The real victory that night wasn't whose hand they raised. It was the fact that they finally had 2 women hands to choose from. Thank you.
One more time for Maya Molina Schaefer. One more time for Maya. Man. Oh, that's a good one, man. I love that one, Maya. I did boxing in boot camp. It did not go so well for me. It did not go so well. Guy hit me on top of my head and under my jaw, then I woke up in the barracks. Yeah. Drill instructor's like, you all right? I said, I think so. He says, because he said the middle of your head touched the middle of your back. He said, I've never seen anything like that in my life. Shout out to you one more time for Maya, a champion. Oh, when I asked our final storyteller for the evening, what words of wisdom have always served you? He said, to take your broken heart and turn it into art. Please put your hands together for Diego Aguirre.
When I graduated from high school, my father sat me down and he said to me, so I don't really have money right now for college. What about the Marines? Didn't you always want to do that? And I thought to myself, yeah, when I was like 12. And the only reason for that was movies. You know, I love the movies. I cinematically romanticized everything. Every dog I had growing up, I imagined I was Elliot and they were E.T. I had a bit of a rough childhood. I dream of escaping, just like DiCaprio did in This Boy's Life. Everything was a movie to me. So when my father planted that idea in my head again, I thought, okay, this might be cool, a little Full Metal Jacket without the war. This was the year 2000, there was nothing going on. So I start doing my research and I'm getting really excited about it. You know, I see that the famous commercial where the guy slays the lava monster with a sword. He transforms into a Marine in his dress blues. And then that voiceover, the few, the proud, the Marines. That was geared specifically towards daydreaming chumps like me. I read that the last phase of boot camp in order to finally earn the title of a United States Marine is this mentally and physically grueling 54-hour endurance test called the Crucible. Come on, I ate that shit up. I'm pumped, I'm ready. I'm 17, I need my parents' signature to join. My mother doesn't want to give it to me. She begs me not to go. I promise her that nothing is going to happen, that I'm just going to be playing G.I. Joe for the next 4 years. Through tears, she reluctantly signs, and on May 31st, 2000, I arrived by bus at the Marine Corps Recruit Depot in Parris Island, South Carolina, where I am promptly yelled off and ordered to stand on these goofy yellow footprints on the ground. It was sheer chaos from the get-go. Both ears flanked by screaming drill instructors, uniforms and military gear literally thrown at us, painful buzz cuts down to the scalp, and the screaming, it never stopped. Most stressful environment imaginable. And my personal scarring favorite, one of the last things we had to do that first night there was pee in a cup for a drug test. Now, I suffer from a severe case of stage fright when it comes to peeing in public. I can't even go in urinals in public restrooms. I have to wait for a stall to open up. And these drill instructors are right behind you, watching the whole time, making sure that you don't tamper with the cup or cheat in any way. Needless to say, I could not go. They had me drinking water all night. I was ready to burst, and I still couldn't go in front of them. I had all 3 drill instructors in my face screaming, "What are you hiding? Have you been doing drugs? Are you going to pop on my piss test?" "Sir, no, sir, this recruit just can't go with anyone watching, sir." I was like Chunk in the Goonies. The rest of the platoon had gone to bed a long time ago. They still had me in the bathroom chugging water, screaming at me. They had me go in the stall, try and go number 2, see if that helped. Nothing. They finally took pity on me. "You better hold that shit in. First thing tomorrow, you're taking my piss test." I couldn't hold it in. I peed in the middle of the night in the bathroom. But I also peed in the cup in the morning. Where was that scene in the movies? Where was the pee-shy kid? That night I laid in my rack crying, wishing I had listened to my mother, thinking, what the fuck did I just do? I don't want to be a Marine. I just want to act like one. But it was too late. I had to adapt and overcome. So I implemented the old movie scenario once again. The screaming, the obstacle courses, the combat and rifle training. I just pretended it was all just one long montage and I was the main character in my own movie. Which probably explains why almost 3 months in, I still didn't feel any of those core values that they talked about. Honor, courage, commitment. I was just coasting through, just doing the bare minimum. And then we graduated, and we all get sent our separate ways to our permanent duty stations. Mine was with 3rd Battalion, 6th Marines, Lima Company, in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. This is where I found my people. I found brothers, father figures I had yearned for my whole life. Men I didn't want to let down, men I wanted to be better for. We trained hard, we played hard, we laughed together, we suffered together. We were a unit. And for the first time, I felt like I belonged to something bigger than me. I was finally living those core values. I've been with my new family for a year now. And then one beautiful Tuesday morning, it was oddly quiet in the barracks. I'm walking on the balcony of my floor. I walk past a friend's room. I look inside. There are like 8 guys sitting on the edge of the beds, eyes glued to the TV. I walk in, I'm like, what's going on, guys? Shh. And just as I look at the TV, the second plane is hidden. And this room filled with otherwise rowdy 18, 19-year-old boys, we all just silently look around at each other, and we know we're all thinking the same thing. Holy shit, we're going to war. Movie's over. No more montages. We landed in Afghanistan Christmas Day, 2001. 30 minutes later, we're digging 2-man fighting holes, setting up a 360-degree perimeter guarding against Taliban forces. It's funny how just a little over a year before that, I was playing war in boot camp, not really wanting to be there. And now here I was, war showed up for real, and there was nowhere else on earth I would have rather been than right there in that desert with those men to my left and right. "9/11 changed many lives. Some in an instant, some over years. I'm very proud to have been even a small part in helping to find some kind of justice and comfort for them. I've lost a few brothers along the way since landing in Afghanistan that Christmas morning. And I keep losing them today to their own battles inside. I went in for the wrong reasons, naive reasons, and yet being a Marine became the very thing that defines me still 20 years later. I went from immediately regretting my decision to join to being absolutely certain to this day that I would do it all over again in a heartbeat, given the opportunity. Thank you.
One more time for Diego Aguirre. One more time for Diego, man. Powerful story, brother. Powerful, man. And I'd like to give a round of applause for all of our service members in the building, active duty, reserve, retired. Thank you for your service, for all that you've done for this country. We cannot say thank you enough. Tonight's show, it was directed by the grand incredible Larry Rosen and produced by the amazing Maria Saravalli. The Moth would like to thank all of our community program instructors who worked with our tellers tonight. Juan Rodriguez, we've got Larry Rosen, Darius Sharp, and Jasmine Francois. We would like to thank the entire team here at the 9/11 Museum and Memorial, senior manager of the Moth Community Program, which is also Juan Rodriguez, our musician, the grand incredible man. Give it up for Laura Lewis and doing her thing. We would like to thank our crew, audio engineer Max Fagan, videographer John Vigoa, and photographer Jason Falchuk. And a special thanks to our generous funders who made tonight's program completely possible. The Sprague, I might not say this right, Sprague, is that correct? Education and Charitable Foundation, the Cowles Charitable Trust, Acton Family Giving, the NYC Department of Cultural Affairs, the New York State Council on the Arts, the Langoloth Foundation, and unlikely collaborators. And of course, we'd like to thank all of our storytellers and all of you who came out and witnessed this amazing evening of storytelling. We hope that in the next few seconds, you find the opportunity to shake someone's hand. In the next few moments, you find a chance to give someone a hug. In the next few days, you find a chance to tell someone your story. This has been the Moth Showcase here at the beautiful 9/11 Museum. Thank y'all so much for coming and attending. If you're going to exit, we have exits right here in the back, and they got something else happening here, so they want you to go there. We're gonna have our storytellers gonna come up on stage. We'll take some amazing photos. My name is John Good. Y'all have an amazing night.